All right, what's going on, Buff Nation? Hope you guys are having a great Friday. Hopefully, a lot of y'all were able to catch at least some of the DNVR show that was going on today. But me as and Russ, we wanted to hop on today, talk a little bit of the latest Buffs news. If you haven't subscribed to Russ and Buffs News Weekly, go ahead and do that, please. How are you doing, Russ? How many subs are you at right now?
We're at 315. We almost doubled over last weekend. So it was a big weekend for us.
Dude, let's go, man.
Yeah.
I love it. Want to give a quick shout out to Outsider Sports that's in the building. Pog LLC. He's glad we're going to be able to stop talking about Bishop Thomas, and I guess this will probably be the last time that we do. But I guess I just had to bust this out one last time. It was fun while it lasted.
Hey,
Bishop Thomas. I thought you were the team clown, the funniest guy on the team. That's why I got his jersey. High expectations, and I think on my thumbnail or on my title is just the whole thing's just a damn shame. So I guess Chico reported last night that he was off the team, and then today we saw an article from Sports Illustrated where they were saying their sources were saying that the Buffs have cut ties with Bishop Thomas. So I want to hear, Russ, your instant reaction to this.
well, at first, it kind of made sense. Then today, listening to the DNVR one, and getting to hear kind of the inside from Neely, his big thing, which I kind of agree with, was I think the news coming out right now that he's off the team is not news at all, because Neely said that he's never been back on the team and somebody made a mistake on the spring roster, still listing him. And so,
I didn't catch that.
yeah, he was talking about that, about how, the Amazon documentary said he's been suspended indefinitely.
Right.
And Neely said that that's literally exactly what's going on. Bishop, I guess, is still around the university. He's still around the team, but not officially a part of it. Could there ever be a chance of him reconciling? Technically, it's not 0%, but I'm going to assume it's about, 1% chance that he comes back. Just because it sounds like him and Coach Prime just did not see eye to eye on a lot of things. And Zion, I would agree. We're technically doing the clickbait, which Neil even said, like, we need to stop with the clickbait for the kid. But definitely what Chico posted last night. Now this article coming out. People are definitely piggybacking off of this news that I don't even know if it really is news. Like when it came out, I was like, yeah, that's probably what I thought.
Yeah, I kind of see this as, he was indefinitely suspended. And I feel like especially with what Sports Illustrated was reporting, that according to his sources, like he is no longer on the team. It seems like that suspension has turned into it being more finite, as like, hey, the door is kind of closed on it. So I think it's kind of at the final chapter. I would imagine that Bishop moving on here, do you think he has much of a college football future? I would imagine that. You're coming here. Bishop had just as much opportunity as anybody else with this defense to really create a starting spot for themselves in a pretty weak defensive line this past year. Failed to seize that opportunity, and maybe JUCO ball is maybe his next route. What do you think?
Well, I think, when it comes to the player, he was great. Like he started to do, like he was one of the few bright spots on that defense early in the season. The TCU game, he made some plays. He made the special teams play, where he made that huge hit. So he had upside. It's the off the field stuff that just ruined him. I'm wondering truly if Bishop was not able to kind of fix the off the field stuff in order to play football, I'm wondering if he really just has his heart in football still. And if that really is something he wants to do, which again, it doesn't have to be. Sports do not define you as a person. And if Bishop's thoughts are, I want to do my own thing, which it sounds like, that's part of it. I think that's probably what's going to happen. My guess is he's still going to have his scholarship probably available to him. Usually when this stuff happens, the player kind of has the option. If they're not on the football team, they can still stay around. They'll honor the scholarship in most cases. I don't know if
Gotcha.
that's the case. It sounds like, again, Neely said that Bishop is still around. He gets treatment from time to time in the training room. So he's still there. My guess, he finishes out this school year, and then next year, I'm not sure. But if I were to guess, I don't see him being somebody that would want to go, to a JUCO and try and kind of like resurrect his career, last chance U style.
Yeah, it's and in case you guys aren't familiar with what happened with Bishop, it still stems from that indefinite suspension he was initially given last year, or I think he skipped an academic meeting. That's what they showed on the Prime Amazon series, as well as I'll edit this so that it's a little bit more friendly. But when he was doing some sort of extra conditioning, as I think some sort of punishment or discipline, looked at the coach once he was correcting his form and said, "Who are you, my effing daddy?" And I imagine that didn't go across well at all. So I imagine that it's probably a multitude of things, or a combination of things, that would lead to a suspension, and then it seems like now an official dismissal from the team. It just unfortunate, and this is a tale of, man, all the talent, but could not put it together. To see him seize his full potential, it's a damn shame.
Absolutely.
Well, on a lighter note, let's talk about something else, man. Let's talk about these guys getting their money. We saw that. I think you sent me that tweet that On3 posted an update about the states of, I think it was Virginia and Tennessee, winning a lawsuit that will allow collectives now to make direct contact with players in the transfer portal, as well as high school recruits, and negotiate, independent deals, NIL deals based on that. What was your initial thought on that? Does this affect Colorado in any way?
I don't think directly, but I think what this really does is, again, it's slowly starting. First, it was the transfer portal rule that the courts overruled the NCAA on. Now we've got the NIL rule being overturned because the NCAA was wanting to slap Tennessee with some sanctions for improper use of NIL, and now they're saying you can't do that. That is not a part of your organization. You can't control that. I'm really thinking that we are seeing the demise of the NCAA before our eyes. We know that it's going down this path. We know that we're eventually probably getting to some super leagues and like minor league NFL with like maybe ties to universities like on the side, but not really like the main sport. We're just moving ever so closely to that point where NCAA is going to have nothing to do with college football, probably college basketball, and who knows what else going forward. But yeah, it's really, and if you go on Twitter right now, everybody, and go look, it's obviously trending. That's exactly what people are saying, is that literally the NCAA pretty much got bitch slapped by the courts because they're pretty much now telling the NCAA, you have no authority over any of these programs to tell them what to do.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where this goes. Again, I don't really feel like there's much use for the NCAA in college football now. Essentially, it's pretty much the Wild West, and it seems like the way that I look at it is that they kind of target programs to go after, when, in my opinion, probably a ton of collectives and other programs are doing this stuff too. So
Yep.
It's just a useless organization that's taking a lot of money, brain power, and energy from all these programs. I mean, there are literally positions at athletic departments for compliance, because all these NCAA rules are ridiculous, man. It's better for them, for programs, to employ people that can educate people about the rules, rather than having the people calling the shots in the athletic department and the coaches just being educated on what these rules are and then just moving on. I mean, it is ridiculous. And yeah, I would assume that you're going to see the NCAA fold at some point when it comes to being involved in college football. And then maybe we can get back to regionality when it comes with all these other non-revenue sports and conferences. I think that that's direction that I'd like to see it go. But I got a question for you, Russ. Like, you talked about a super league. What do you think about a like European soccer style relegation and elevation type of format for college football? What do you think about that? Or how do you see a super league structure kind of working?
As a big soccer fan, coaching soccer and having played soccer and following that, I always love the model that European soccer has with sports. It really makes the entire season matter. It makes, even if your team's in last place, there's no tanking on purpose for that draft pick. There's no tanking for that player. On top of that, if a team gets bought out by some corporation and has a $1 million takeover, all of a sudden they have a chance to compete. I'm thinking that might be a good way, because I think what's going to happen is you're going to have some teams that are going to be frustrated because they're going to be on the outside looking in. We're already seeing that with the Pac-12, now the Pac-2. Those teams are, unfortunately, they're going to be in a decent shape next year because they're getting to rule all that money. But after that, like, I wouldn't want to be those teams or those institutions right now. Like, as far as we're concerned, they're on the outside looking in. If we do get to that point, they're going to be definitely teams that aren't even going to be looked at in that scenario. So now it's going to be about, okay, what can teams do to market themselves and create a brand that is going to be valuable to the SEC and the Big Ten, which I assume are going to be kind of where everything's going to be going towards, because of them joining forces and starting to look into that. So, I would love a system like that, because I think then it does allow you to say, hey, you're not cutting it. It's going to make the importance of, having coaches around. When a coach leaves, are you going to make the right decisions afterwards? Are you going to pay your coaches enough to keep them around? There's a lot of incentive for actually competing year in and year out, instead of just trying to make money, which I think you could fall into with some of the lower programs.
Yeah, I think that once we decide, or college football starts making that decision to move away from the NCAA, then I kind of see conferences as like there's no point to them. So I think you're totally right. Schools like Colorado need to be continuing to invest in football, basketball too. I guess that's another story, but primarily football, to make yourself attracted to the schools that are making up the SEC and the Big Ten right now. But I would imagine, hey, if this whole thing is about money, which it is.
Yep.
If you're the Big Ten and SEC, you still see value in some of the schools that are outside of these conferences. And I could see a way in which everybody's kind of brought together in a way, but still the SEC and some of those blue blood programs are probably benefiting more than other schools. I'm curious, like, what type of Jeanette Fox had this good comment here. This is the reason why you see coaches are leaving college football. You need some type of guidelines, or it's going to be a hot mess. Is there anything that you would hope to see put in place in terms of guidelines, whether that's with the college football calendar, NIL, any of that?
I mean, if we get to a super league, you're going to have to institute maybe some, not hard salary cap, but something in regards to that, I think, to make it at least a little bit competitive. A lot of people don't realize, but like English Premier League and a lot of the other European like soccer leagues, obviously there's big money going around there, and it's just kind of free for all. You're buying players. You're not really doing anything else. There are some guidelines that a lot of those leagues have in regards to homegrown players, what you can do with that. There isn't a hard salary cap, but there's at least some guidelines when it comes to how you select your teams, how you select your players. So you don't just have who is the richest team buying every single player, even though you somewhat have that. You have your big ones, and we're gonna have our Texas A&Ms, our Alabamas, our Georgias, the teams that have a lot of cash. Ohio State, Oregon, I guess we could be involved with that since they have the Nike money. So you're gonna have that issue. If they want it to be competitive, the more competitive it can be, the more valuable the league as an entirety will be towards the TV deals. Because if you just have 4 teams every year that are just constantly dominating it, then you might as well just create a 4-team league and just have them play each other over and over again, because it doesn't matter those other games. I mean, let's be honest, in the preseason for college football, when, Ohio State plays Appalachian State, who's going to win that game 9 times out of 10, and it's not really that entertaining. It's usually a massive blowout on the likes you don't ever see in the NFL. And people are just not going to watch unless they're, fans of those teams. It's the close games they care about. So you got to make sure you have that competition. So there's got to be some kind of rules. So I'm interested to see what they decide to do. I know I've heard you talk about it a little bit on what you would want to see, kind of the direction of that going. What are some things you think that they could possibly do?
It's a good question. I kind of have some out of the box ideas. I think first off, when it comes to institutions paying athletes directly, I would imagine that they want to avoid that for as long as possible. I don't understand. Like, I know that there's been some advisory committees looking into opening that up, but if I'm looking at this from the university's perspective, why would I want to take on that liability? It doesn't make any sense for me. And so I think you'll continue to see stuff coming when it comes to funding of the paying of athletes, for it to continue to come from NIL endorsements and collective deals. And I think the universities are more than fine having it that way, because they're able to avoid liability, pensions, insurance. Remember all that NFL concussion lawsuit stuff from like 15 years ago? Like, they don't want to be facing any of that. But I do think college football, they're bound by this academic calendar in a sense that I think is honestly really outdated for what you're expecting of these football players, regardless of what you think. Their first job coming in here is to play football. It's not to seek an education. And let's just call it what it is. Like, some people go to school to, practice engineering and to prepare themselves for that. Other people are going to school for athletics and to prepare themselves at hopefully reaching the next level. The one catch is that a very small percentage, of course, go pro, but you're at least compensated in a decent way and having that ability to go get an education. But I think that it would be nice if college football removed the requirement for kids to take classes, and they kind of went in more of a major junior hockey type of format in Canada, where for every year you play major junior hockey, you earn yourself a full year of college education post-career. So you can have that benefit when you fully have the time to devote to it. You're not getting some watered down version of it. You're able to focus on what your main priority is each step of the way. I would like that, because then you're able to regulate the off season a little bit more, to where the transfer portal isn't opening up before bowl games and all of this stuff. And then you have coaches that are leaving late in the season before it's even wrapped up for certain teams, because they want to be there before the portal and recruiting period opens. You're able to kind of formalize the off season a little bit more, but because schools aren't wanting to assume liability and paying guys directly, I'd imagine they're able to work out, still this finite years of eligibility. Because then once you start signing contracts, and if guys were to play for colleges for 10 years or whatever, then those types of lawsuits saying like, hey, we are employees, we deserve pensions and benefits and all this stuff, then all that stuff comes out. But that's kind of how I think about how I like it structured. But I understand that's a total overhaul of a system. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I love that idea. Thinking about the major junior kind of way of things in hockey actually makes sense, because it is, they have a certain age range that they're allowed to keep playing the sport. You can easily enforce an age maximum.
Yes.
So maybe we don't get, certain players, cough, Utah, Miami has the guy that's like 29 years old going
Casey
to like
Thompson back at Oklahoma
season.
now.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Like, that is just laughable. At that point you should have a doctorate and be, on your way to becoming a full doctor. But, if we're going to take that out of it, yeah, put some limitations on how many years you get or age, maybe max out an age. Time the schedule so it's more like the NFL where you have free agency, you have periods that coaches can, get out of their contracts so that it doesn't put these kids in a bad spot where they're kind of screwed. Absolutely. I think there's a lot they can do with it. I think we're going to get there. The first steps I think is, and we're probably going to see it somewhat soon. You're probably going to get a, similar to the NFLPA, you'll get a players association that'll represent the players in this. You'll get obviously then a governing body that will try to come up with this. And it sounds like that may be the Big Ten and SEC, heads that are kind of looking at that. So we're definitely going down that path. It's happening more and more each day. Let's enjoy the ride as we can right now, because it's pretty much the Wild West when it comes to rules, and they just keep getting thrown out until somebody finally makes a decision. This is what we have to deal with for a little bit longer.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think it's kind of funny because you look at how pro sports are functioning in the United States, where there's a salary cap, there's revenue sharing, like all this stuff. It's actually probably a little bit more like socialist than a lot of Americans want to admit, because it helps keep those lower teams still up there. Even if they're bad performing, they're still getting the same share that the high performing teams are getting in terms of revenue. But right now, like, I don't have too many issues with how college football functions in terms of pay and like the transfer portal. I think like having a free transfer too, like all that makes sense. I kind of like the idea that players do have, a lot of freedom with their movement. And I think that's one of the things that benefits college football. But obviously, if you're an employer, if you're somebody running a program, you want as much control as possible. But right now, I feel like college football is the purest example of capitalistic sports, which I think is, kind of funny. And I would like it to look different than the NFL. And that has me ask this question to you, Russ, being an English Premier League guy, a soccer guy, when it comes to players training in their academies, like once they get past primary school, all of that, is that kind of how it functions, more so like major junior hockey, where once they're teenagers being in these programs, they're primarily focusing on soccer, and then do some of them go back to secondary education or college after their career ends? How does that work when you're like 16 years old in one of these academies?
That's probably where we don't want to go down that direction. It's funny you say that. My coaching partner back in Denver was from England. He had grown up in one of the English Premier League academies, West Ham United to be specific. And
Okay.
what happens is literally you turn 16, you get brought into the coach's office, and the coach determines, okay, are we signing you to a professional deal, or is your soccer career over? And it is a 16-year-old. I mean, just imagine being at 16 getting told, sorry, you're not good enough. You're done playing the sport for the rest of your life. And that's what happened to him. He said he was so depressed that he left the office, went straight to the pub, and drank for about a week straight. And that was the end. Those kids don't want to go to school at that point. Their life has been soccer from, 8, 9 years old until they're 16. It's all they know. And when that moment happens, it's usually never good. So they usually will start chasing other opportunities with soccer, maybe lower leagues in Europe, other places. But I don't want us to get to that point for sure.
Yeah.
Setting
Are they
up the
given
kids,
some sort of like education credit or anything like that?
I
that
don't
they can
think
use?
so, because you also got to remember in Europe, the university system is much different than ours. Obviously, school is free over there, but it's not necessarily free for everybody in the sense that you have to test to get in school. You have to get approved. It's much stricter to get a spot in different universities for different things because of the fact they're paying for it. So a lot more kids there actually forego going to university and go into different professions rather than obviously testing into that. So a lot of those kids, that's what happens. So that's kind of where I would say I don't want to go down that road. I don't want to have like, feeder systems, kids. I think what we do right now works. I think high school, having that being fed into college sports is good. They get that education, they get that decision. I like your idea of giving them that college credit so that maybe afterwards they can go back to school for free. That would be really great if they needed to, maybe extend that time a little bit, or also give some of the players an option to maybe take some classes on the side, but not
Yes.
requirements.
Right.
I think that'd be great because when you're on the bottom of the depth chart, if you could go to school for free, I'm sure those players are like, yeah, it's fine. I know that I'm probably not going to the NFL. I'm a walk on, whatever that would look like. I'm sure that would be like practice squad players in the NFL, but I think that would probably be a better direction than really what is fully going on over in Europe, just because of that.
Oh, that's really interesting. I appreciate you sharing that. And Jeanette has another really interesting question here. So, for instance, if players transfer out from one school to the next, will they give money back? I think like right now, how that works with, if we're looking at NIL deals that are coming from collectives, I feel like that's all probably negotiated. And in some sense, it depends on how big of a star you are. I imagine that some people, let's say Travis Hunter is getting paid. I don't know any of this, but let's just assume that Travis Hunter is getting paid some sort of amount from one of our collectives. I would imagine a signing bonus is negotiated, and all sorts of other different clauses where some players have to pay back certain things if they leave. Other players or agents might not just negotiate that anything after this date is no longer payable to the athlete or anything like that. Anything else on how you feel like some of these NIL deals are structured?
I think it's a lot less structured than we think because we've kind of seen that already. Look at what happened in Florida with Jalen Rashada. Like, he did not get the agreement that they agreed to. They pulled the money. So it sounds like no actual contracts are being signed. They're almost like handshake deals. So in that case, once you receive that money, it's yours. I would never say like, oh, I made an agreement, I signed a contract, I give the money back. So again, I think that would be part of the future of this is we would have actually signed deals. They would probably be public information. You probably know how much players are getting, what's going on. That would all have to be public facing. Like right now, everything is kind of shady in the background. We have no idea what this looks like. We get little glimpses and hear things. The big one this week that I saw that I was kind of like, well, that just shows you that NIL is a lot crazier than you think, which is DeAndre Robinson. A guy that was looking at Colorado. He committed to Texas, showed up to Texas, gets out of his NLI, goes to Florida, and the next day he buys his parents a house. Like, what does that tell you about what happened there? That tells me that Florida, even after he committed to Texas, probably said, okay, you know what? We'll give you more money. Here, let's help you buy your mom a house if you come over here. And he's like, oh, I really like that. That's better than what I'm getting right now from Texas. Okay, get me out of my NLI and I'm going to go over to Florida and do it. Like, nothing against the young man, because I've said that. I'm glad they're getting their money. I'm glad that's happening. Like, but we need regulations to try and stop that, because that's not really fair for that to be happening behind the scenes. It should be a contract that protects both the player and the team, to where you can't just back out of your commitment, and the team can also not back out of your commitment on the other side.
Yeah. A lot of this is done in secret, and we only kind of get the details if it ever comes out. But I think Jeanette's bringing up a point here that I want to hit on, that you're kind of hitting on too, Russ, is like, yes, we know that Travis has brand deals, but there's a lot of this stuff that goes on behind the scenes that, in my opinion, is never released, that we don't have knowledge to. Again, you follow some of our players on Instagram. They're living in places 3 times my rent right now, and I don't see them having any brand deals. We can say what's publicized like we know of, but I would assume that if these collectives are giving money to second, third stringers, Travis is going to want a piece of that too. I would, coming from the collective, and I would assume other people are. But again, that's my opinion, and that's all speculation.
Yep.
But yeah, you bring up a great point. How right now, how this thing is set up, it's set up to where there's potential for a lot of fraud, a lot of people not following through with what they promise, and then that's why you get all these certain deals with, like you said, Jalen Rashada trying to get out of there with Florida because all of a sudden the money is not promised, it's not coming up here, and I think some sort of formalization with that process would be helpful. To me, it also seems like, I don't know. Like I guess some of the top guys in college football right now have agents, but I feel like families, for the most part, are negotiating these deals as well. And who knows if they're even talking with lawyers or anything like that too. So it just leaves a lot of opportunity for people to get hurt and taken advantage of. And that's I guess the one thing about NIL that I don't really like about how it's unregulated right now.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
definitely need some kind of player association to help out parents, to maybe help them take some literacy courses. Like Coach Prime, really great, example. He brought in some financial coaches to the team to talk to the players. That's real smart. I'm sure a lot of the teams do, but I'm sure there are teams that don't. The players need resources to know what to do, especially at that age. I'm sorry, that's even worse. Like, you see rookies in the NFL blowing their money and going broke. I can only imagine what an 18-year-old who gets $100,000 check is going to do with that money. And unfortunately, we see it because, the kids are already driving around in, Hellcats, and it's like, okay, well, that's great. I'm happy for you, but is that the smartest decision right now for you without, the future really guaranteed? Like, how much money are you actually getting? How long is it going to last? If somebody handed me $1 million right now, I could probably live off that $1 million the rest of my life. But I'm also an adult who has, a background in finance, has done a lot of stuff with that. I would feel comfortable doing that. If you gave me $1 million as an 18-year-old, I would think that one is a lot of money and I could just spend it however I want and it'd never run out. I don't want to see that from these kids. So we need something.
Yes. But I think, the universities, they're going to try and avoid disclosing as much detail as possible when it comes to these things, because if it's ever reported or required that you have to report what every player is earning and yada, 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 then the values of the contracts only go up more and more and more, which, again, I feel like that's why they're going to try to avoid any sort of involvement in compensation for as long as possible. Russ, I want to ask you about this, though. We've talked a little bit about some of these European academies getting these players trained up. Sometimes you'll see this with like smaller schools, more so private schools, universities. They'll have like a connected or like sister, like high school or primary school. Like, for instance, where I went to undergrad at Abilene Christian, there was also Abilene Christian Schools, which was a smaller private school. But I've kind of wondered, like, if we're talking about wanting to develop players, have a closer relationship with them, having an advantage over them recruiting wise, why haven't these universities, I guess, it would be kind of tough as a state school, I guess, to make this. It would probably require some close connected boosters to then start a private school in a sense. But do you think you might see some more universities, for instance, TCU, Big 12 school, or BYU, start to really invest in like a high school athletics connected to BYU, to then, in a sense, you almost have an advantage with recruiting and developing talent earlier on, especially if you're given authority from an NIL collective perspective to negotiate with those players already for compensation, just going ahead and moving up to that university, whether that's BYU or Baylor, to play for them, and you can recruit them from all over the country at a younger age. Have you thought about any of this, or am I just crazy?
Well, I mean, it kind of already exists. I mean, look at IMG. That school solely exists to put players in Division I and professional leagues of sports. We have those things around here. I don't think teams would have to create new ones. I think they're already in place. Now you'd have to create a partnership with that school to where, and then again, if the NCAA is out of the picture, you've got more of an option, because obviously high school sports right now, there's a lot of rules with the NCAA and who you can talk to, what you can do on the high school level. If you took the NCAA out of that and you allowed those coaches to be a part of that, you could see coaches start to put their guys in place at a specific school locally and then go out recruit nationally like IMG does, and probably create. I mean, the problem already exists. Like in Colorado, we have that problem already with a couple of the private schools in the state. It's Valor, it's Cherry Creek, it's Kent, Denver. It's these schools that are, able to recruit. They say they don't recruit kids. I always remember that, and I always laughed because it's like, you have to accept kids and you have scholarships, so you're probably recruiting in the most part for those kids. So those things are around everywhere. So you absolutely, I think, could do it in a way. I don't think the schools would have to create brand new high schools for that, but that's what I think. It's kind of already in place there. Now we just got to kind of pull back and say, go for it.
Yeah. That's a great point about IMG. And yeah, they're able to recruit guys from all over the country, play for them, like Cash Cleveland, even just his last year of high school football, coming out there to play for IMG. I do wonder like how the whole profit model works for some of the academies like that. I'm not totally sure, but I would imagine like some of those guys, they're paid to come play for schools like IMG. And I mean, surely all that stuff goes on in Texas high school football where you're recruiting guys to move and out in Florida. I just wonder how it all works. We need somebody to lay that out all the time. I think it's all real interesting. But again, I kind of like the fact that there's not a lot of regulation right now around NIL, anything like that. Allow these guys to make as much money as they possibly can and don't bind them to, staying at one place. If that's not stipulated, man, I don't have an issue with that. Just like you and I will leave our current jobs for a higher offering job, at the first offer, these players should have the ability to do that too. So it's going to be an interesting, I think, like 5 years or so. Do you see anybody sitting out of this college football 25 video game because that $600 payment just isn't enough for them?
I do and I don't. I think it's going to be kind of the middle of the road players, because I do think, and we've already started to see it, Travis Hunter being one of them. He already tweeted it out. That tells me he's part of that endorsed player where he's probably getting extra money from EA to actually advertise and be a part of the marketing and be one of its main athletes.
Yeah.
I think you're going to have players like that. I think they're going to be players below that think that they are worth more than $600, but who EA think are not worth the marketing money to put into them. I saw something interesting yesterday. I think it was Tyler Columbus, one of the Broncos guys down the media, saying how much they got for Madden. I had no idea that every player
10K.
got 10 grand, 10K for being in Madden. Now, the problem with that I wanted to like tweet at him and say was there's 32 teams. In college football, there is 134 teams, and there is bigger rosters than the NFL. So we're talking about a lot more players. And this is the first year of the game. They got to make sure that it sells well. I know it will. Everybody's excited about it. But if the game comes out and ends up being bad, like that's not good for EA. They've got to make their money this first year so they can say, okay, this is a moneymaker. Let's up the amount that we give to the players next time, because maybe the players start seeing, oh, it's the highest selling video game of all time. We want a bigger chunk of that, whatever that looks like. So I don't think we'll see too many, but I definitely think there might be that small in between that thinks they're that more valuable than they are, but less than what EA values them at. I don't know. I think a little bit.
Totally. And yeah, Tyler's leaving this out too, that I would assume all the likeness is at the Madden level that's negotiated by the Players Association.
Yep.
So that's another thing that college football currently players don't have any sort of union to negotiate on the behalf of all the players. And that's why if I'm Travis Hunter or if I'm one of these other top athletes in college football, that $600 isn't enough. If I'm Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning, that $600 is not enough, and you're not going to sell nearly as many copies if those guys aren't in the game. So everything is negotiable right now without a union and without regulation. I think it serves to benefit the player the most.
Look what happened with the jerseys this year. I mean, Travis and Shador and Shiloh opted out of the NIL Nike jerseys and got their own like side deals to sell jerseys for NIL, which are fine. I would have loved to have a Nike Travis Hunter or a Nike, Shador Sanders jersey. I still would to this day. But obviously they didn't get a big enough piece of the pie, thought they were more valuable. Got that other jersey out there that I'm sure for whatever, I don't remember the brand that they used.
It's like $10 cheaper than the other jerseys.
It was, but they got probably a much larger cut of it in the end. And so, I think we'll see players start to do that. The ones who are marketable enough, Shador and Travis are the most marketable players in college football right now. They're the biggest household names. No matter what anybody says, they are up there in NIL valuation. It's just the way it is. I know everybody hates Colorado. They hate the everything that has to go for it, but it's just the truth. And so they have the leverage to do that. Not every athlete will have that leverage. So you do have that. And absolutely, they need a union. They need a player's rep. They need something sooner than later. And I think that's going to be the next shoe to drop is some players are either going to put through a lawsuit or they're going to start the negotiations for a player union for college players outside of the NCAA.
Yeah, we got that lawsuit going on right now, or I guess the lawsuit that was settled with the Dartmouth basketball players, if I remember correctly, but we haven't seen anything happen in a very long time regarding any of this at the FBS level, probably since Northwestern. I mean, man, when we were maybe in elementary or middle school, man. So it's been a while. But yeah, I would imagine a large lawsuit is on the horizon at some point. We can't go on, forever without it. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what comes from the game. Hopefully FCS schools are added later on too. But my biggest one is just make sure it's not on that Madden engine, man. These players need to be moving so much more smoothly than how they do in that Madden game. I'm not a gamer, but I see the clips. And those players do not move naturally. It's crazy to me how bad they look in 2024, dude, on like a PlayStation 5, man. That's crazy. Do you play Madden?
Yeah, I do a little bit. I haven't the last couple of years because it has been so terrible and it has been the same game over and over again. That is my only worry with this because, they're using that Frostbite engine, but they also say it's not going to play the same as Madden because they've had more years to work with it. That still frustrates and concerns me. They're saying everything right now when it comes to that game. All of the details we've gotten in the last couple of days make me super excited for the game, make me really look forward to it. But I also, I still have that, it's the trauma, the PTSD of EA Sports and what they do to sports games. Like they have a chance to be one of the best sports games ever in this NCAA, but also why do they need to put that much money into this game if it's the only college football game? Like people are going to buy it most likely anyway. And so that's my concern and worry. I'm going to wait until we see more. I'm excited for it. I really want I really, really, really want the Colorado jerseys to be in there. Like whatever the new ones are going to be, bigger history of jerseys. Right now, the only thing we know that's confirmed because of all the assets that were sent to EA and the public knowledge of it was not even this year's jerseys were sent. The year before Coach Prime came, jerseys were sent, the grays, the whites, and the blacks. And if that's all that's in there, that's not going to be great. I've heard a lot of people say, oh, there's time to put the new jerseys in. Here's the problem. Anything that they submit to EA, because they are a state-run program, has to be public knowledge. That's how the guy found all the assets last year. Was he literally put out state requests for information, which is public legal knowledge. You go look at the articles for it. It's really crazy. It's why he doesn't have every school, is because it's only certain state schools that he got that data from. And Colorado's list of information that they were given was Folsom Field, Ralphie pictures, some pictures around the stadium, and then
They
those
have
old
Peggy in there.
jerseys. No Peggy yet. No Peggy yet. They
Peggy in
probably
the
have to
game,
license
man.
her. They'd probably have to license her, but who knows? That'd be probably the coolest thing ever to see her shaking the pom poms, during the like pregame festivities. But yeah, so if they're gonna put the jerseys in, we have to have them actually announced because I think they know that they will leak that way. And I know that Coach Prime is not going to waste a marketing opportunity to do something flashy with it, which is why I also think that the spring game fashion show has to be the jerseys. If they're not, the jerseys will not be in Madden or NCAA 25 this year. They won't. We'll have to wait another year.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. So if we don't see jerseys this spring, we're probably not seeing them in the game in July.
Now, I saw this on Twitter today. I don't know if you saw it, Russ, about like coaches not being in the game this year.
Yeah.
Are they really gonna do that without Coach Prime, Lane Kiffin, Sark, all these guys? They're not gonna be in the game?
Yeah, it sounds like they weren't able to get the negotiations done. Obviously, the coaches' negotiation is going to be a lot different because of how much coaches get paid and everything to do with that. So my guess is they just couldn't get to it because they're still trying to figure out all of the athlete stuff. And my assumption is you're going to prioritize the athletes first because there's more of them than there are coaches. And 5 times out of 10, maybe you and I are going to play Dynasty as ourselves, put ourselves in the coaching spot. So really, do you need them? Probably not. We got away with it for a really long time in sports games where the coaches were just random people, and people haven't complained too much about it. Now, I do think the hilarious part is them saying that you're not going to be able to create any player that opted out of the game.
Oh, good Lord. Really?
I'm like, okay, so what does that mean? We're gonna put the kids' names in the database, and if you match up the names word for word, it's gonna stop them from going in there. So people have been joking on the internet that it's like, oh, I'm gonna be playing as Shadur Manders instead of Shador Sanders, or putting numbers in the name to get that right. I don't know how they're gonna do that. The only way they truly can do that is if they create a player completely out, which they know they can't do. So it's weird. It's weird. Those are the parts that I'm like, I'm a little concerned going into this year that they haven't figured that stuff out a little bit better.
I got another question for you, Russ, with this video game stuff, because I'm just like S represent. He's saying, or they're saying they haven't played a video game since they were 16 years old. I haven't had one of those big time gaming consoles since like 2010. I got rid of my PlayStation when I went to college. It's just something that I wanted to do. And I have my Nintendo Switch that I'll like play every now and then, but it's not anything, like a PS5 or anything. But I think I remember with the PlayStation 3, and this might have even been PlayStation 2, where you could go online onto the NCAA games and download custom rosters that people had created with everybody's official name in there and everything like that. So I remember doing that for Tim Tebow and the Gators, having their whole roster in there and everybody else's. And so are you saying that there wouldn't be any, like, they wouldn't allow a database or like custom rosters to be shared or anything like that?
I don't think they're going to do that just yet because that's what got him in trouble the first time around.
Oh, for real?
That was part of it. Obviously, they were also doing shady stuff where they had all of the stats for the players and just named them something else or named them quarterback 15 in the Tebow case, and quarterback 15 was left-handed and ran the ball a ton. And it's
looked like Tim Tebow.
Okay, like we know who that is. You don't need to. So the problem is they're going to have to, if they opt out, they are going to have to go completely random. And by the way, this isn't the first time this has happened in sports. If you go back in time with sports video games, Michael Jordan never licensed himself to video games until he retired. So any of the video games back in the 90s and 2000s did not have Michael Jordan. They had a random player on the Bulls that was a 99 overall.
Never had the Michael Jordan on the Bulls.
Nope, that's why he refused to license himself to video games. Barry Bonds refused to license himself into video games after a while. So the joke was, I can't remember his name. It was a white left fielder named Joe something in the MLB The Show games back in the early 2000 or late 2000s that was Barry Bonds. You knew it was Barry Bonds, but he was like, they made him completely look different. The other person that surprisingly had this issue, Bill Belichick, has also not allowed his likeness in video games. So the Patriots in all of the recent Madden games have just New England Patriot coach. That's who the coach is for the Patriots in that game. So it's happened before and they've gotten away with it. The problem was the NCAA games, they obviously did not do enough to differentiate those players from the real life ones because they use the same numbers. They use the same height. They use the same weight. They did everything the same and just didn't name them. So I don't think that's going to happen. However, if this game is on PC, now all bets are off because PC games are easily modded. They've been doing that to Madden for years. Well, not years, because it's only been a couple years that Madden's been back on PC. And we've seen what the modding community has done there, by the way. If you ever go look it up, the modders do a much better job than the actual developers for Madden do because they put a lot more detail and work into it. They've done some amazing things with mods that you have to go look at to see how realistic they can make Madden look. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I'm going to have to do that.
And then the second thing is that you probably don't realize, which I'm actually partially excited for with the new NCAA game. There is a thing called NCAA Revamped. It is a mod for the NCAA 14 video game, which was the last NCAA game. And these modders have been releasing updates to this with rosters and teams and jerseys. And oh yeah, I play NCAA.
Do you have
Revamped.
to pay for it?
Nope, it's completely free. You technically have to own a copy of NCAA 14 in order to download and play it. But you know, I'll just leave it at that. Other people can kind of get where that comes from. I will say NCAA 14 is a very expensive game if you want to get the actual like copy of it. I have 2 copies of it. It's like a couple $100 if you want to buy one of those because of how in demand they are because it ended. But go look it up because guess what? EA actually hired half of the NCAA revamped team to work on the new NCAA game because they did such amazing things to the old game that they had to go out and do that. So EA was a little bit smart there and didn't just, close them down and say no. They actually hired them on to make things. So there's so many cool things behind the scenes. We could probably do an entire afternoon talking about that stuff, but yeah, it's kind of interesting to really see where that's all come from.
Wow, incredibly interesting. And okay, I got one more video game question for you, Russ.
Yep.
So I want to get this video game, even though I'm not a video game guy, and I want to stream it to whether that's YouTube or Twitch or whatnot. My friend told me that Steam, because I like the handheld ability of the Switch, but obviously not the best graphics on this thing, and I don't think you can stream from the handheld. Maybe I'm wrong. But yeah, I've heard that there's a handheld Steam console. Will we see College Football 25 on Steam or on the PC in that way?
I'd have to go look. I don't know if they confirmed it for PC or not. If it's for PC, then you can play it on that. My recommendation for you, one, you could technically use your Switch. But I don't know if NCAA is coming to the Switch either. Because again, that's a very different beast entirely. The other problem is if you do want to stream, and hey, this is advice to anybody out there. I stream video games regularly. I have a completely other channel persona that does all that stuff. You can obviously see all the video games in the background if people have been watching my videos and ever noticed that. The thing I would recommend is one, I would get one of the 2 consoles. I would either get an Xbox or a PlayStation. The reason why I say that is you absolutely could get a PC to stream. But the problem is that when you're streaming, you have to have enough power in your computer to be able to stream and run the game at the same time. And that takes up a lot of juice. Mm-hmm. So you absolutely can do it. You're going to need a very good computer. Steam Deck is not one that I would say you would play the game on and stream at the same time. It's not powerful enough to do both. I own a Steam Deck. I love it. But it is limited by its mobility and power. The reason why I say console is probably a better entry if you're somebody that's like, hey, I want to start streaming video games. That's because you can get an adapter that goes into a computer so that the computer does the streaming, the console does the gaming, and you just feed the picture into your computer, which then feeds it over, just like you do here with your camera and StreamYard and doing all that stuff. So very similar to that. That's going to be your cheapest entry into streaming if you're starting out from scratch. So that's, if anybody out there wants to do that as this comes into fruition and we start seeing a lot more probably streams pop up with NCAA coming out, that's going to be kind of the best way to do it.
Man, I love it. Well, thank you so much, Russ. I guess we'll have to, maybe we can ask the mod community to make a CU Buffs team with all of the Buffs content creators. I think that would be hilarious. And we can take on other teams and their content creators. I think that would be a lot of fun. We can have like 5 different Chicos playing offensive line. Yeah, we can have Rawhide running the special teams, Cole and more, running down the field, taking down kick returns and everything like that. That's my idea. Somebody that's watching, you got to go with it.
I bet you somebody who's watching plays NCAA Revamped and they're already like starting to type in that and going to be sending it to you here at some point. Like, hopefully that'd be really fun and really awesome to see.
It would be a lot of fun. But yeah, Chad, you can go on to David Talks Buffs on Twitch. I used to stream some of these shows on here, but I don't really right now. But yeah, when I get that console, when I get this game ready to play, I'll be putting it on there for sure. It'd be a lot of fun. So, Russ, I appreciate your time, man. This hour flew by. Let the viewers know what you got coming up soon for the viewers, as well as how many subs are you at right now?
315.
375, you said?
315. We're at 315. Let's see. We'll do a quick update right now. We'll see if that's changed.
Let's do
317. We've gained 2 subscribers in the last hour. So appreciate whoever that was on here. But yeah, check out Buffs News Weekly on YouTube. I do a weekly news wrap-up show every Saturday right now. During the football season, the plan is to probably do Sundays because we obviously want to have the actual games involved in that summary. But yeah, feel free to go over there, interact with me. Same thing on Twitter, Buffs News Weekly. That's where I retweet and do all of the up to the minute news sort of thing. And just love interacting with the community in Buff Nation. So yeah, I appreciate everybody. I appreciate you, David, for welcoming me into the Buffs content creator community. It's been awesome getting to be a part of it and meet other people and do that. And see the growth already. Like I said, I doubled subs last weekend, so I'm excited to see what happens this week. And there wasn't even really any news last week. Like, it just hit right, I guess.
Yeah, man, I absolutely love it. Y'all, please go subscribe to Russ's channel. I've linked it in the description of my video. Like 90% sure I did. So y'all go subscribe to Buffs News Weekly. Russ, always appreciative of your time. Everybody, thank you so much for chiming in on the chat. This was a very lively discussion. Appreciate you guys. As always, I'll be back tomorrow, and Go Buffs. All right. Thanks again.